Hello, friends, and welcome to this brand new episode in this season of Hear Their Voices. This is the Icon Podcast. First of all, I want to apologize for those of you who've been waiting for this. We were supposed to start, I believe, 19 minutes ago. We're having crazy technical difficulties, but we know that's how it is. So we're going to roll with it, right? Are you ready to roll with it with me? My name is Priscilla Ozodo Acevedo. I am your host here at HTV, the Icon Podcast. And for those of you joining us for the first time, and you're wondering, what is this video that came across my feed? And then there was this blank screen for the first 20 minutes. We are ICON is the International Committee on Nigeria. And ICON promotes human dignity, the right to live, religious freedom, and the protection of all vulnerable people from persecution in Nigeria. So we work together to get the voices of the voiceless heard. And last week, in this season in general, we are concluding a very long season. This is season 2 of the Icon Podcast, and we're concluding this season. And we've been focusing on challenging our guests and challenging you to speak up on behalf of Nigeria, to speak up, to raise your voice, to find platforms where you have influence, and to speak up on behalf of Nigeria. And last week we had our guest, Pepe Wonesiku, and we were just so grateful to have her. She talked about the importance of education and how the education of children, particularly the girl child, has been affected by this genocide and just the killings that are going on in Nigeria. This week, I was excited to introduce you to our guest. He's been someone who's been very vocal. He is the example of speaking out. He is what we were trying to get you all to do. And he's been very vocal and very loud about what's going on in Nigeria. We're having trouble connecting with him. We will keep the program running. And as soon as we get in touch with him, we'll bring him into the room. But you're welcome. And I am your host, Priscilla Ozodo Acevedo. So, just to give a little bit of a recap, y'all. How many of you watched? Oh, before we go on, you see, somebody should have reminded me. We were going to forget. Remember that we share this. Remember my saying every single week. It is not good for you to watch the Icon Podcast by yourself. It is absolutely not allowed. So I want you to go. You must have received a notification a while ago. The Icon was live, right? So go on your YouTube or your Facebook or wherever you're watching this and go and share it. This is where we go and share whatever is happening, right? So click the share button. And I like to share on WhatsApp because that's where a lot of my family is. I can put it on my status and share. You can share it on Facebook. If you receive this on Facebook, you can just say, come watch this with me. This is something that, I'm eager to watch. And you can say, it starts late, skip the first 5 minutes, or something like that, prepare them so they're not sitting and waiting. But I'm excited to welcome you to this episode of Hear Their Voices. Now, we did something really, really important last Friday. And I just want to do a recap. Last Friday, we celebrated the 18th birthday of Leah Sharibu. Leah Sharibu went into captivity when she was 14. This is her 4th birthday in captivity. Now, when we say celebrated, we put that in quote and end quote, right? We had an event that we called and we are calling Raise a Song for Leah. And you can see right there. Raise a Song for Leah. We brought artists who wanted to dedicate their special songs to Leah. It was like it was about an hour of concert. We got to hear their hearts. We got to hear them speak a blessing over Leah. We got to listen to their songs. If you missed it, you need to go back and watch it. All you have to do is go to the Icon channel, International Committee on Nigeria channel on YouTube, and you will find this video. If you missed it, this is something that should be in your playlist. This is something you should be listening to a few times a month because it reminds you on how to be praying for Leah. We were so blessed. Now, some of you are like, oh, I didn't miss it. I watched it and it was amazing. Who have you shared it with? Who else can benefit from watching Raise a Song for Leah? Like, I watched it and my immediate thought, I watched it. I was in it. But I even though I was a host in this, I was so blessed by it, so inspired to pray for Leah, so challenged to spread the word. And my first thought was, what communities, what groups am I part of that I can share this? And I want to challenge you today to say, who are those people that you can challenge to share this Raise a Song for Leah? It's less than an hour of music and conversations about us raising our voice and speaking up on behalf of Leah Sharibu. Now, usually at this point in our program, we will say we will go through the news of the week. But you know what? We want to challenge many of you to sign up to receive the news of the week in your email. So there's some amazing things going on in Nigeria. You need to hear about them. All you have to do is go to iconhelp.org, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click and fill out the form. It's your name and your email. That's all. We're not asking for your firstborn son or your mama's address or any of that stuff, okay? Just put your name and email, and that way you can stay connected with getting information. You can also sign up for Hear Their Stories, which is a new segment we do once a month where we share specific stories about people who are experiencing persecution in Nigeria. All right. Now, one of the reasons why we were so excited to bring our guests in today is because he just has been part of the journey. And I don't know if some of you may know that Icon has this book called Silent Slaughter. And you can download it for free at iconhelp.org, or you can get a hard copy. Now, our guest was somebody that just took this information and ran with it and used it as a platform to speak a lot. But while we try to get back in connection with him, we will have a conversation with the one of our Icon directors, Kyle Apps, and he is going to tell us a little bit about the story of this book. Why is it important? Why was it important for them to write a book? Why was it important for them to gather some data about what was going on in Nigeria? And how long did it take? Because when I see this book, I'm like, this is a lot of information. I'm trying to show you the thickness of it, and how long did it take to get this data? And what is the benefit of it? What is it doing? And while we wait for our guests, Kyle and I will have a conversation. Now, Kyle is not a stranger to this podcast. You've seen him over again. If you're new, well, Kyle is our director at Icon. So join me to welcome Kyle Apps to the studio as we discuss Nigeria's Silent Slaughter, the book.
Greetings.
Yay. Hi, Kyle.
Yeah, great. Sorry we couldn't. I mean, we're still trying to get David. I specifically wanted to be here with you and to talk to him about it because it's a important thing that he's doing. So
yeah, I was gonna say one of the what our audience may not know is that you're on the road. You've been traveling all morning, and you took time out of that to be here. So thank you for being here. So Kyle, how did this happen? What was the purpose of this? And give us some history on Icon's work with this book.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, last year we compiled this. It was not just last year. We've been working on this for a year. And last year, June, July, we launched it. We started circulating it. We handed it to the Secretary of State at that time, Pompeo. Did a launch with different specific political and media people and influencers just to show them what we believe is actually going on in Nigeria. So the book has data. We compiled data from different sources, several sources that the government uses, and also we are in contact with Nigerian governors. Taraba State and Benue State supplied data as well as other small ethnic groups like the Birom, the Rigwe, and other groups that have been attacked or slaughtered in the last 20 years. So we look from January 2000, January 1st, 2000, to December 31st, 2019. Actually, we kind of trickled into some of the reports, actually went into 2020 as well.
So Kyle, did you, what made you think, oh, we need a book? Because some people think, well, we've been telling the stories. What made you all decide we need to write a book? Because I know Icon has been working long before this book was released. So
Yep.
what inspired this compilation of data?
It wasn't our intention, never our intention. We were talking about it. We were giving out documents, one pagers, 20 pagers, but eventually someone said, where's the data? People kept saying, where's the data? Where's the data? And we said, we have the data. The data is there. Here. So then we said, okay, we'll make it into a book. So we decided to take stories. We have testimonials. We have eyewitness accounts. We have things, like I said, from the government as well. And then we had other interesting people, as AJ is showing the actual digital book, which you can get on iconhelp.org. He'll put this up there, I'm sure, /Silent Slaughter. You can download it as a PDF. So the book has several prominent people from the UK, Baroness Carolyn Cox. We have former Representative Frank Wolf. We've got Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi. We've got Dr. Greg Stanton, Jubilee Foundation. People that have been studying and researching Nigeria have all contributed to approving of this book and affirming that its value is out there. And that's where David kind of came into the picture. All of a sudden, about a month ago, I'm seeing on Twitter pages, just physical pages that he's laid out and he's snapping and he's posting all over Twitter.
Wow. And he took this and he ran with it. But the average person will be like, why should I read this book? Why is this book important in raising our voice? We've been talking throughout this season of Icons. Speak up for Nigeria. Speak up for Nigeria. How will this book help the average American or the average Nigerian to speak up on behalf of Nigeria? David took it on Twitter and ran. But what are ways that people can engage using this book?
I think just looking at the sheer facts and the weight of it. So names, he was when I saw him on television in Nigeria. I just came back last week, Wednesday, a week ago from Nigeria, and he was on several Nigerian television shows. He's just holding the book up, citing names, just reading out the names. Because often we hear this: 6 people died, 20 people died, these people were displaced, but we don't know the names. Some of them we have some of the groups have supplied pictures of. This is what they look like when they were alive. And this brings home that these are real people. These aren't just people in another continent. Yes, they are, but they have children. They have wives. They have husbands. They have mothers, fathers. They are mothers, fathers. So it puts it really into perspective. We say that over 60,000 have been killed in the last 20 years. 20,000 by Fulani militants, 60,000 by Boko Haram and ISWAP. That's 80,000, nearly 90,000 that people have been killed. Those aren't just random people. Those are people that woke up, went to work, woke up, went to church, woke up, smiled and played with their children, but now no longer.
Yeah, you were talking about the names, and I was just going through it, and I don't know if you all can see this list of names, just names, and their communities that they're from. There's like 10 names from one specific community. I just randomly opened to this page, and this is from name 209 to name 249, and this is just some of the hundreds and hundreds. This is a few of the 80,000. I'm just gonna mention some names because, like Kyle said, sometimes we just hear hundreds of people have died. I just want to take a moment, Kyle. I don't know if it's okay to just read down some names that that might prompt you to do something. Might prompt you to post something, to say something. I have Daniel Audu, deceased victim. Haruna Obagudu, Sule Boniface, Peter Ojepa, Paul Enogela, Sani Oloya, Onyejefu Michael, Ada Odojo, Ochologwa Stephen. These are a few names. For all those names I just mentioned are from the Okpanchini Agatu community of the Agatu local government area. And these, like Kyle said, these are brothers, these are fathers, these are parents, these are friends, these are family members that didn't go home one day. Things just changed. And I know we like to keep things like lighthearted here, but I just want to remind us that our purpose here is to stop this genocide. Um, Kyle, will you say, I want you to talk a little bit about the work of Icon before and after this book. Will you say this kind of gave us more of a platform to speak? Because when people ask for data in the past, we had nothing, and now we have this book. So can you talk a little bit about the influence of what having this book did?
Yeah, I mean, it was never that we didn't have it. We just didn't have it in a concise manner like this. So this book has a legal argument. The first 100 pages or so, actually, a legal brief. And I just met with the lawyers who wrote this. It wasn't just some random writing. This is actually something that they could petition the Nigerian government. International. These are international lawyers that could take this as a case against the Nigerian government. So this is, again, we're not saying specific people are to blame. We can, and we're actually looking into that, but we're saying this has gone on for sure for the last 5 years, if not longer. But for the last 5 years, the pattern has increased significantly. So when we put this book out, all of a sudden people are asking us where the data come from. How do you know this is true? They try to dispel it by saying, "Oh, this is just farmer herder. This is climate change. You're just putting a spin on it." Oh, yes, that's part of it. But the main thing is these are ethnic, religious clashes going on. Not just clashes, war. Some people say it's all out war. When you go to these villages and see how they've been taken over by cows, they can't farm for 2 years now. Their ground is unable to farm. That's their livelihood. They're subsistence farmers. They can't farm. How are they going to provide? Who's helping them? So these are the things we bring to light, we share, and we continue to need voices. Like anyone who's listening, anyone that does, go to our website if you're in the U.S., click on where your senator, your congressman are from, write to them and say you're concerned about the situation in Nigeria. If you're in Nigeria, continue to look into people who are voicing their opinions, people like David and others who are raising their voice, and find out the facts that are on that do exist.
I know that a lot of people say, we don't know what to say. And that's where I can say, here, we've given you ammunition of what to say and how to say it. Particularly, go to Icon Help, go and find out information. What I'm not sure if AJ has this video, because I want to give an example of what David is doing using this book. I know we pulled off some of his videos where he talked about this book. I don't know if we have that to just show some of what people are doing, but you don't have to be Nigerian to stand up and fight. You don't have to be just some crazy advocate. Sometimes all you need to do is click share. Just right now, take this video podcast and share it. That's all it takes sometimes, is share what we have, what we've produced. Kyle, is there what will you say to people who are concerned? Because I've heard, I just don't want to get involved. This is too complex. What will you say to them? People who are just kind of confused.
I mean, if you're confused, then find out what the issues are. We're not saying only use our book, our data, but find out. There are other sources out there. But get a balanced view. We're not saying that the climate change, that unemployment aren't a factor, but the overriding factor is there's something that's been going on besides this, and we believe it's ethnic, it's religious, it's been going on. So get your facts in order first, and then start to share. If you're in America, like I said, Congress, the U.S. government gives almost $500 million every year, if not more, to Nigerian to use for displaced people, for sustainable living. But it doesn't need to be that much. It shouldn't be that much. You're trying to help people survive who have been displaced. Well, let's stop the battle. Let's look at that. Let's target and see what we can do. Reduce those monies going in. Call your Senate, call your congressman. If you're in Nigeria, yes, it's difficult because there are always threats of government heavy-handedness or calling and exposing you. So do what you can. Pray. Find out people who are doing things. Share with that. Get the facts. If you are being attacked, if you've known places that are being attacked, you can directly email us, and we'll put you up with a way to report those things safely and securely. So there's ways to be involved without exposing or causing yourself any harm.
Thanks, Kyle. I love that we have connections. We have people around that can get the information to you, or if you have information and are scared to bring it out, we can get the information from you in a safe way where you don't feel threatened or harmed. I'm getting word that we may be able to actually get David in um, soon, and I'm excited. I'm just going to tell our audience a little bit about David before we get him in here. And David is a writer, he's an investigative journalist, he's a broadcaster whose work has appeared on CNN, The Africa Report, The New Yorker magazine, and The Washington Post. His work he his work as a satirist on the Other News, Nigeria's answer to the Daily Show, has featured in the New Yorker magazine and in the Netflix documentary Larry Charles, Dangerous World of Comedy. In 2018, he was nominated by the U.S. Department for the 2019 Edward Murrow Program for Journalists under the International Visitors Leadership Program. And in February 2021, this is an important person we're bringing. In February 2021, he's won the People Journalism Prize for Africa in 2020. He tweets at David Hundeyin. And if you have not been following his tweets, this is a good time to start following him. And we don't say this lightly. We say this for people whose voice are doing what we want you all to do. And we're not just elevating his voice because he's we're not elevating his voice because he's a celebrity. We're elevating his voice because he's saying the things we need people to hear. And we want you to learn from him about what he's saying and what he's fighting. So I'm just going to check with, oh, yes, his Twitter information is going on the bottom of your screen. You may want to follow him right now, and get some more information. Okay, I'm checking right now with my producer to see if David has been able to connect and if we can get him in the studio. All right, let's get David in the studio. Please join me to welcome David Hundeyin to the studio. Okay, we're waiting for the connection. As we continue to wait, and I hate that circle that just slows down our process, but I'm excited to welcome David. I don't know about you, but I want you to grab your pen and paper. This is not just one of the podcasts, and some of you may be listening to this on rebroadcast or on Spotify or on Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts. And this is a time to slow down. You know, if you're on the treadmill, slow down your run. If you're on the if you're driving, just take your time to listen. Don't take notes while you're driving. But we really want to dial in to what David has to say. And while we wait, y'all know that when an episode is hard to come by, it's like the best one. When all hell breaks loose on your show, it's like the best one. So y'all hang tight. Hang tight. Don't give up the fight. We are excited. I'm personally excited. And I'm just going to talk a little bit, AJ, if you just want to zoom in on me while we wait, I just want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing this whole season, because we're concluding season 2 of the Icon podcast. And while we've been bringing so many different guests, our goal is to get more voices in the fight, to raise a song for Leah, to raise your voice, to speak up. If you remember, we started promoting this campaign sometime in February, and we started saying, speak up for Leah, speak up for Leah. We started at her birthday, and we've been posting information daily, weekly, monthly, every time, getting information to you, because we want you. We don't just want to talk at you in this season. We want you to begin to respond to your communities, to your friends, to begin to be a voice for us. See, Priscilla's voice can only go so far. Icon's voice can only go so far, but your voice can take the message beyond where we can. And your voice may just take it to 5 more people, but y'all, that is 5 more people. So we're gonna try to continue our program our programming and get this connection happening, I'm going to bring Kyle back in to just talk about some of the things you've noticed about David and some of the things he's been doing through his platform. There's Kyle.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm hoping I can be replaced with the real guy. But yeah, I think once he comes on, he'll explain a lot more. So, like I said, I came back last week from Nigeria, spent 2 weeks there, and just before I left, he started to blow up, and what he was saying on the media, on Twitter, it was having traction. I mean, he's the one who kind of raised the thing on the Minister Pantami and his who the Nigerian government said, oh, when he was young, he said these things or did these things. Well, okay, well, let's have a discussion on that. They refused, but he continued to raise that, and then he used our book and said people like him, Pantami, that is the minister, was led to a lot of these things that went on in Nigeria. So having a voice speaking up like this is powerful, but having a negative voice or a voice like that has consequences as well. So I think that's important to hear, and he raised that and wanted the people the Nigerian people to hear that. In fact, the international community to hear it as well.
Kyle, what will you say to our audience who say they don't many people don't have as huge of a platform as David, and they're a little like, yes, David can do that, but how many followers do I have? What will you say to them?
Yeah, I think anything you can do, if you can share with your sphere of influence, you can share with family members, you never know who's going to pick up on it, right? So I think that's the important thing. Just being a voice, a consistent voice, and sharing things. I think AJ say he's ready. So
yes, we have.
I'm gonna sit in the back room. You take over.
Okay. Join me to welcome Mr. David Hundeyin into the studio. Oh my goodness, David, it's so good to see you.
Hi, I'm very sorry for this. This is what they call, this is the internet equivalent of a wardrobe malfunction. Completely unexpected, but here we are.
Here we are. We are here today. So good to see you. I'm going to ask this because I was going to ask you before, and then we didn't have connection. But what is the right way to say your last name?
It's Hun. So basically, think of it as Hoon. So Hun, then Day, then In. Very simple.
Hundeyin.
Yeah, very simple.
Perfect. Thank you for being on the show. We're excited to have you. So I have all this questions.
Sorry about being late once again.
No worries. We're glad you are here, and we're glad that we can have this conversation. First of all, we want to say thank you for the ways that you have used your voice to raise attention to what's going on in Nigeria and to raise attention to the injustice that's happening in Nigeria. We are one of the things I've been curious about is how did you get involved with exposing corruption in Nigeria? Like, it's not just something that any young man just wakes up and say, okay, I'm going to be this person that's talking about injustice on Twitter, and it's gonna, destabilize my life, but I'm gonna do it anyways. But what led you to this point of speaking about injustice in Nigeria?
I think it was as weird and as left field as this will sound. It wasn't necessarily something that happened to me. It was actually something that happened to someone I was close to. I watched my dad die, basically. To cut a very long story short. And is it right to say that that's what radicalized me? Because I think that was the first time I really understood. I realized that no matter who you think you are in Nigeria, no matter what you think you're capable of doing in terms of surviving and just doing your thing, and the country doesn't really make reference to you, which I think a lot of us in Lagos and Abuja love to do. I think that was the first time that Nigeria really stretched its hand into that comfortable bubble and pricked it. And I realized that at any given point in time, Nigeria can do that to you. You're really not as important as you think you are. You're not as safe as you think you are. You are not insulated in any way, actually. It's really just an illusion that you're living in. That was in 2017. In the space of 4 months, I watched my dad and my then father-in-law die within 4 months of each other. And the way they died was really, 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 like, my dad, for example, he had a stroke. And it wasn't a stroke is not it's not a death sentence, but there wasn't an ambulance. Like in the country's largest city, there wasn't an ambulance. And almost 2 hours later, when the ambulance showed up, and he was already gone by then, and then the ambulance service, they took a look at his body and said, you know what, we don't carry dead bodies. And they got into the ambulance and drove off. Then I had to look for a private ambulance service, call them, start negotiating price with them, and then they took another 2 hours to show up. And then when we finally got to the hospital, I had to then pay a bribe at hospital to get my father's body deposited into the morgue because they didn't have a death certificate. So it was just experiences like this in my late 20s where what started pricking that bubble. And I suddenly started to understand that this is how Nigerians live. This is what Nigeria actually is. I think a lot of us who were born in some relative comforts, you know, some relative wealth, don't really understand at all what Nigeria is. You know, we think that the way we were raised is somehow some kind of standard for what Nigeria is. Exactly. But from that point, I started to understand that a lot of people, you know, most people who were born and raised in Nigeria have a completely different experience of life to what I had. And this is actually what Nigeria is. And for the first time, I think I was then at that crossroads that, do I sort of make peace with it? Like my dad did, for example. I just sort of like close my eyes to it and just pretend that I'm just doing my thing and it doesn't make any reference to me. I'm just going to keep doing my thing, keep living quietly, just not rocking the boat, just working hard, going to church, and that's it. Minding my own business and hoping that it won't touch me. Or am I, if I really find this completely unacceptable, am I going to do something to change it? You know that popular saying that may we have the ability to change what we can't accept and accept what we can't change. I know the difference between both. Yeah. So that was sort of like my come to Jesus moment. That okay, do I accept this because I can't change it and I'm powerless, or am I crazy enough to think that this is something that can be changed and I can play a role in sparking that change? And the truth is that I'm one of those crazy people that made that decision that I'm going to use my voice to do something. At that point, I didn't even have a voice. Nobody especially knew who I was, but I just I've been involved in journalism for the best part of a decade, but I was more sort of on the international side of things, on the foreign side of things. I was working for foreign websites, so the money was good. I was living very comfortably, you know, by Nigeria. I mean, in Lagos, if you're making an income of maybe like $3,000 a month, that's, you know, I was very, very comfortable. I didn't have a problem. But at that point in early 2019, I then made the decision that I'm going to pivot from sort of like writing for international audience to start writing sort of about Nigeria and writing for a Nigerian audience. Right. And go on.
There's that space, and this is not even on my notes, but there's that space between where people feel like I'm a nobody and I can't make a difference to where you're at. And people think you just appeared as at David Hundeyin in on Twitter with 100 and something thousand followers, and it just happened overnight. Can you talk about that in between of working and putting out information daily and using your voice, being an advocate when it felt like nobody was listening to you? Can you speak a little bit to that? Just a little bit, because I have so many questions.
Well, in my case, again, I'm probably not the best example to use because I have an extremely hard head. So even when it seems as if nobody's listening or nobody cares or, you know, I'm just a nobody, that stuff really doesn't affect me. I don't really think about that stuff. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just doing what I want to do. This is important for me. I need to do this. So whether what I'm putting out there is making an impact at the highest levels of government or nobody cares, whether it gets 10,000 retweets or it gets none whatsoever, whether everybody's reading it or nobody's reading it, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the voice that I use to put my message out now and the voice that I was using to put the same message out in 2018 are exactly the same, even though nobody knew it then and you know everybody knows it now. So I never really thought of it as, oh, there's a climb, you know, and I'm trying to build a voice, I'm trying to build an audience. I wasn't actually trying, actively to do that. I was just doing it sort of for me, that I feel the need to speak out, that in the case of some hypothetical point in future where I mean technically I'm I'm an atheist, but let's say there's some kind of judgment day sort of scenario someday where even if it's not the supernatural, even if it's your children, you have to sort of account for what you did with your youth, right? Like you come from this place called Nigeria, and it's heading toward like this really, really, really clear and obvious
Yeah.
and avoidable catastrophe, right? One day, are you going to look your kids in the eye and say that I did all I could, that I was part of the prospective solution, or are you just going to tell them that I was a victim? And I was just there. Something that has always interested me is the story of the Balkan War, uh, the Yugoslavian War. So I remember when I was in university, I had this guy who owned like a fast food restaurant, like a takeaway in Hull, where I went to school, and we became sort of like friends. So he was Serbian. He and his wife were Serbian. And over time, we sort of became friends, and he started telling me about, how it was that they ran away from Serbia, how they came to be in the UK, and how that happened. And something that always struck me about the story was that there was never any single point where there was this huge event that happened, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, we need to leave Serbia now. Serbia has, the country we know as Yugoslavia is ceasing to exist. There was no singular moment. It was sort of like just a death by a thousand cuts. For most of what we know as the Balkan War, life, particularly in the capital, in Belgrade, was completely normal. So absolutely normal. There was a war going on outside. There was hyperinflation. There were all sorts of problems. But people were still getting married, having parties and weddings, going to restaurants, going to the cinema. Life was more or less, if you didn't want to notice that there was a destructive war going on outside of the city limits, you could. And this was something he told me. He said, for example, the very first day of the NATO bombings of Belgrade, right? He and his wife, his partner, who later moved to the UK with him, they had literally just moved into a new apartment, right? They had moved in the day before, the day of so the bombing started at night, right? They had moved in that morning, so they had spent the whole day unpacking and decorating and whatnot. And then in the evening, they hear loud bangs, series of loud bangs, and then they open the window, and here you are seeing fireballs in the distance and fighter jets pounding your city, right? And then, like, they woke up the next morning and there was no, like, oh my God, Belgrade has been bombed. Everybody, it's time to panic. No, there were workers going around sweeping up glass. People went to work. Kids went to school. Nothing happened. So I like that always stayed in my mind when I think about Nigeria, that it's actually possible for a country to be disintegrated before your very eyes, and life remains normal, in as much as it's possible for it to be normal, especially in the big cities. If you don't want to know, you simply won't know. Meanwhile, the fact that you're ignoring it doesn't mean that it isn't happening, and doesn't mean that it won't still get to you eventually. It will get to you last. But by the time it does get to you, it's going to be really, really, really bad. You're going to be the worst affected and the least prepared for it.
Yeah. That's absolutely important, because like just mirroring what's happening in the US, sometimes there's a lot of people that I think Martin Luther King or somebody made a statement where, you may not notice what is happening to the other person until it gets to you. And by the time it gets to you, it will be too late. And just how important it is to be an advocate for even issues that seem to be very far away in the future. So just moving on, how important do you think it is to collect actual data, to collect facts about the silent slaughter in Nigeria? And how did the ICON research help your work? Did this, impact what you were doing in any way? How can this data bring awareness and change?
So, especially in my line of work as a journalist, as an investigative journalist, having what we know of as receipts, having proof, having evidence, having data is the be all and end all, right? It's a line of work where if you make a claim and you can't back it up, then you lose pretty much all your credibility. You
Yeah.
must be able to substantiate anything that you're saying, any claim that you're making. You must be able to prove it. So, even though colloquially we've known for a long time that what is happening in the middle belt of Nigeria is not, some accident. It's not some unfortunate series of standalone incidents. That it is actually a directed campaign to actively displace populations. That it follows sort of like the Darfur template in Sudan.
Yeah.
Even though we've known that colloquially, we've all met people from there who told us stories. We've all seen pictures and whatnot. It's a completely different thing when you actually have the data, such as the silent slaughter report, which collates all of these things, where you see actual names of dead people, names and pictures and death certificates. That is very powerful, right? If it's just well, there's no such thing as just, because a human life is a human life, right? But if it's a series of news stories, as it has been in Nigeria over the past decade, where almost every day you see 50 people killed, 30 people slaughtered, and in some cases, the headlines don't even say 50 people killed. Headlines just say 30 slaughtered, 50 dead, 35 this and that. It's like, is it 35 sheets of paper that were torn, or is it 35 cows that, are these human lives or what? It's easy to forget because of the way, like, even the media gets jaded, because it's, after a while, it's no longer a story, right? If you kidnap 5 people, on the road somewhere in the north today, that's not news, right? If you kidnap 50 people, that may be news. If you kidnap 500 people, now that's news, right? That's where we've got to. So having this silent slaughter report was very important, because for the first time, it pulled all this data together. It pulled all these anecdotes, if you like, together with incident reports, with names, with documentation, which is very important, because the Nigerian government loves to obfuscate issues by telling you that you don't have documentation, right? But all the documentation is here with infographics, with everything. So it's impossible to deny it, first of all, which is the first thing that the Nigerian government always wants to do. The Nigerian government always wants to deny it and say it's not true, it didn't happen, you made it up, it's all in your head. They love gaslighting people, right? But this report makes gaslighting impossible, because it's all there. You can't deny it. And then secondly, for the benefit of those who haven't been paying attention, or those who don't understand how serious this is, or for those who have followed the stories and they've just mentally checked out, well, it's just 30 dying in Benue, whatever, my life in Lagos is fine. This doesn't make any reference to me. Seeing this report, right, in full color, seeing all of this, seeing photos, seeing actual people, right, and all of this for 310 pages, it makes everything real. It humanizes the victims. It humanizes the experiences. For the first time, you can see yourself potentially in this situation. Like, everybody in Nigeria, whether you live in a city or wherever, everybody comes from a village, right? Everybody's tied to an ancestral homeland, right? So on some level, everyone can sort of think of themselves as, okay, this could be my second cousins back in my village. If my grandfather hadn't moved to the city, this could have been me. I can see myself in this, because for the first time, these victims are made human, right? Which is a completely different thing to how the news cycle covers these stories. The news cycle covers them as one-off events, first of all. So it's difficult to contextualize them as a series of events. And then the news cycle is always very eager not to give context to it in a way that might upset the government. Because in Nigeria, press freedom is a very, technically, there's a free-ish press, which is how come we can have this conversation. But press freedom is very much, press freedom is very much an ideal, not necessarily a fact. In Nigeria, that's the reality. So the press always does what they can to avoid stepping on the government's toes frontally. So, for example, using the word genocide to describe what has happened in the Middle Belt, I think this report is the first time that the emergence of this report is the first time that it has become acceptable to use that word with reference to what is happening in the Middle Belt in the mainstream news cycle. It's not as if we didn't know it before, but for fear of being labeled as rabble rousers or as people trying to spark conflict or whatever, Nobody used that word. But now that this report has proven, proven to the US government, in fact, that what is happening satisfies the requirements for being recognized as a genocide, then it's no longer possible to deny it. And these are the reasons why this report has been probably one of the most important things to come into the Nigerian news cycle over the past decade.
Yeah. Oh, David, thank you so much. I think Kyle had a question, and I'm not sure if AJ is going to bring him in. But one of the questions was, ICON is working on releasing an update to the data report. Yeah, there's Kyle. So I'll have him just kind of expand on that.
Hi, Kyle.
Yeah. Hey. Hello, David. How are you? Great to meet you.
I'm fine, thank you.
I got
Same
a
here.
fan. I'm a big fan. So what you've been able to do just by your voice and your platform is amazing. So we want to encourage you and keep it up. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I think even the use of the book, you had wanted to talk about it earlier than you did, but I think there were some things that we're not on. Anyways, well, you did it. I think the timing was great. How you tied it in with Pantami and other things from there. So I think what's happening now is the data's going out. This is last year. We're trying to update it again this year. So I guess my question would be is if you could have something encapsulate data presentation, what would you want to see more of to help with the last nail in the coffin, as it were, to seal up this atrocities that are going on?
Well, I think from the point of view of trying to drive home the point that this is a directed campaign, that this isn't a series of standalone events. This isn't a series of unfortunate accidents. This isn't a series of clashes between farmers and herdsmen, or however else it has been portrayed. I think it's important to sort of document the what's the word I'm looking for? The aftermath, the outcome of these attacks. So, for example, the villages and towns and the areas where the unknown gunmen, the invaders, the herdsmen, terrorists, whatever you call them, have come in and have committed these atrocities. It's important for people to see that the outcome of these attacks isn't just the number of people who die. It's also the fact that these areas are permanently depopulated.
Yes.
That the people who live in these places are permanently displaced, and that those areas where people have been displaced from are now occupied. They are now inhabited by the people who committed these atrocities. So this isn't just about violent disagreements or violent clashes. This is very much the Darfur scenario, where a demographic, an unwanted demographic of people is being actively displaced with support from the state, right? This is what Omar al-Bashir did in Sudan. It's very important for Nigerians to have that perspective, the aftermath, because I think if we focused a lot on the actual attacks and the victims, but not so much on the victims who survived, and the aftermath of what happened to their places. Because I think, for example, the reports documented, I think, was it the total of about 90,000 deaths. So if you think of 90,000 deaths, that's a big number. But sorry to say this, in the context of Nigeria, in the context of Africa, 90,000 deaths maybe doesn't sound like so many, right? The Nigerian Civil War, 3 million people died, 3 million civilians mostly died in the space of just under 3 years. So if you say 90,000 people died in 10 years, it's like, oh yeah, that's a pity. But so I think in addition to the deaths, it's important to point out that it's not just people who died that is in question here. It's the fact that entire swathes of Nigeria have been artificially repopulated. The demographics of entire swathes of Nigeria have been artificially altered. Even the names of these villages have been changed artificially, in some of these cases. So it's important for this. This is what sort of like captures the public's imagination when they finally get to see from a wide angle that this is what is happening. People are actively being replaced, and that if this is happening in Benue or in Kogi or in Jos or wherever, that there's every possibility that my own village somewhere in the southern part of Nigeria might be next. So that, therefore, this affects me, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I think I just came back last week. Sorry I didn't get to meet up with you, but I know I didn't want to bring any heat to you. But so I just come back from Nigeria, and I'm hearing an interesting thing. Even this whole bandits term. You look back in media, that's a new term. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, you didn't hear it, but now bandits. Who are these bandits? We know who they are because when you go negotiate your ransom, who comes? It's usually a Fulani that comes. And now I've heard this term, North Central. So Plateau State, Kaduna State is no longer Middle Belt necessarily. It's North Central. They're putting in that word North to kind of take
Yep.
over that as well.
So it's like these are the things when I say that the Nigerian news cycle has been unfortunately, it's not intentional, but the Nigerian news cycle has been complicit in sort of pushing the state's narrative and sort of enabling these things to happen. These things that you just mentioned are the things. So the latest term to come out of this cycle after bandits is UGM, which stands for unknown gunmen. What is an unknown gunman? You have to ask them. I have no idea what an unknown gunman is, but that seems to be the latest euphemism that we're using around the country. There's an attack here, 25 people died, and it was carried out by unknown gunmen, right? So before, once upon a time, they were headsmen, Fulani militia, terrorists, whatever. Then that morphed into attackers, and then that morphed into bandits, and now that's unknown gunmen, unidentified gunmen. So here we are.
No, exactly, and I think that's the biggest thing. The data we use in the book came from a resource called ACLED and the Nigerian Security Tracker, which is American funded. So these reports are being funded by American government to research, and they don't dive into it. If you just look at you go to the ACLEDdata.com site, you look at it, it says unknown gunmen. But if you look at their source, you can now see that we know if you would have followed up with another report, you could have easily seen these are the gunmen. They are Fulani militants who've come in, and if you say unknown, then people don't understand. They don't identify. But when you actually follow up and do more in-depth data research, you see this. These are Fulani militants, or this is what's happening. So I agree. There's the way the media is presenting it. It's being used by other people, governments, to do wrong things. So that's why your voice is needed. So keep shouting from the rooftops.
I will.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to conclude with this question. David, is there hope? And what are the things we can do to promote hope in Nigeria?
There's always hope. If there wasn't any hope, then I don't think there'd be any point having this conversation. There's always hope. The situation can always be turned around. What it would take, though, is a certain level of mass awareness, mass consciousness amongst those who are fortunate enough to be literate, those who are able to follow the news cycle, those who are able to keep abreast with events in Nigeria. There's a very large population of Nigerians who don't have these luxuries, whose only goal in life is day-to-day survival, right? But for those of us who don't fit into that demographic, who are fortunate enough to have circumstances that permit us to be politically aware and to be active in the public discourse arena, it's very important that we at least really understand what is happening, and that we're able to contextualize what is happening, so that the reason I'm pointing this out is that it's, as I've mentioned maybe 5 or 6 times now, if you're just reading news in Nigeria, the news media in general in this part of the world, not just in Nigeria, I think in West Africa, it's fair to say, does a very poor job of linking or building links between different stories, of contextualizing stories. So it's difficult for people to understand how bandits attacking people in Benue State is connected to your power outages in Lagos, and how sort of like that superstructure of a compromised state leads to bad governance, which leads to bad outcomes. It's important for people to be able to build these links between these disparate and separate structures and entities and events to be able to understand that the reason why you go through certain experiences in Nigeria that you don't like, wherever you are, is also connected to why certain other people are going through experiences that they don't like, and that uh, this doesn't then mean that everybody has a sole singular interest and everybody has to come together in this sort of cliche rainbow manner. That may not be realistic, but it does mean that there are issues that you can unite around in a political sense, and that everything is linked.
Yeah.
Right. Even in the so-called Muslim North, right? It isn't as if like there's a part of the country which is just like having a great time. Nobody's having a great time in Nigeria. Everybody's going through it, right? So even in the so-called Muslim North, there are still things which, you know, we share some what's the word? We share interests on some levels, right? We share some economic interests. You know, we share some political interests. So if it's possible to take our knowledge of current affairs, our knowledge of political affairs, and our knowledge of the news, and use it to build context. Context is the most important thing. To understand what it is that we're up against, to understand where we are, our place in Nigeria and our place in the world, why we are where we are, then that helps us build an understanding of how to move forward, how to change it, so that we now, in the name of chasing change, we don't end up making things worse. Because I think that's the most important point that can be made, that there are some people in Nigeria presently or from Nigeria who think that what they're preaching is something that will lead to change, that will change everything. But however, what they're preaching is essentially warfare. I don't think anybody should really want that. I don't think that helps anybody, right? Because I think that's the exact opposite of what we should be looking for. We're trying to save lives here, not use people's lives as chess pieces on a board. So if you build that context and build that proper awareness, then I think that helps us understand what political moves that we can make as a group going forward. On an individual level, what things we can stop doing or start doing to essentially make the future a better place for our kids than what it is now. Because at the end of the day, there's a popular joke that goes around in Nigeria where, you know, every time something goes wrong in Nigeria, then the word Canada starts trending on Nigerian Twitter. It's people making jokes about emigrating to Canada.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's if we are to believe the official figures, there's almost 200 million Nigerians, which is about 3 or 4 times the population of Canada. So how far realistic is it? Even if, you know, Nigerians have the money to emigrate to Canada. Exactly. So at the end of the day, on some level, even those of us who can afford to move, our families, for the most part, are still going to be in Nigeria. So
I love the word context, because we see it as all these different things going on, you know, that is wrong with the country, but it's all connected. I love that you use that word. Speaking of Canada, what do you think the role of the international community is in this fight? Because we see people really wanting to get involved, but they're not sure what their role is because they're not Nigerian. What do you see as their role as we come to conclude this conversation?
So part of the role is, I guess, what ICON and PSA were hoping that the US government would do, which I guess for political reasons, Mike Pompeo at the end of the Trump term probably didn't think you know it was worth taking as a political risk. So I think he just sort of passed the ball to Joe Biden. Like, let's see what they do. So they put Nigeria on that list, which is like kind of a step in the right direction, but it's not really what was asked for. You know, what was really wanted was a special envoy. So putting Nigeria on that list sort of like signals to Joe Biden and to the State Department that there's a problem here, but it doesn't really do anything at the same time. So I think ideally the international community, in a diplomatic sense, the international community shouldn't be afraid to engage with Nigeria from the point of view of, hey, the state is assisting in killing its citizens, in a way that it engaged with Sudan when Omar al-Bashir was doing the things that he was doing. I don't think the international community should, because I think the international community presently has this sort of fear that, I've heard this from someone who has links to the EU delegation to Nigeria, actually, that the number one priority of that particular diplomatic outfit in Nigeria is maintaining this thing called stability, right? And stability means that we don't want, the country to be destabilized. We don't want 5 million immigrants from Nigeria showing up on the shores of Libya trying to get into Europe, showing up at the NATO border, because then that becomes our problem, right?
Yeah.
So in the name of trying to maintain stability, that means that, if Nigeria's president is sending out troops to shoot civilians in the streets, and then standing up for these civilians and standing up for human rights might hypothetically lead to some sort of, confrontation and whatnot. That is instability, and we don't want that. So if it means standing on the side of the Nigerian government, then we'll do that in the name of stability. What they need to understand is that, yes, in the short term, that will guarantee some form of stability, in as much as pointing a gun at somebody will make them stable for a few seconds, right? That is stability. However, in the long term, that instability that you're trying to avoid now will become worse.
Yeah.
And you are guaranteeing that it's going to spill over. So they should be braver, I think, in their approach. They shouldn't be afraid to, I don't want to use the term break a few eggs to make an omelette, but they shouldn't be afraid to engage robustly with the Nigerian government. The Nigerian government, I know, tends to blackmail the international community a lot by telling them that, hey, if you come after us, you're going to destabilize the country. You're going to have, 10 million people showing up in Malta or in Greece, in Italy. You don't want that. So, first of all, that means that you got to send some amount of aid to us, and that means that you have to tone down the type of criticism that you make of us. Which I mean, in the aftermath of the Lekki massacre last year, where I actually heard this from a diplomat, that the statements that were to be released by sort of like Western governments in response to that event, they wanted those statements to be significantly stronger than they were, but they were simply afraid. They were scared that, look, if we come after this Buhari administration in the way that we want to, this might not end well for us, right? If we do this and it leads to some sort of like youth uprising and some sort of like Tahrir Square style, revolution in Nigeria, in a country as diverse and divided as Nigeria, then the aftermath of that revolution might lead to some sort of like civil war or whatnot, and we don't want that. Because that, then we're going to have the problem of Libya times 10. So we're just going to put out this sort of milquetoast statement that it's just inoffensive. It doesn't really accuse anyone of anything. It doesn't really say anything. It just make some reference to human rights because we're scared. I think the international community should not be scared. There's nothing to be scared of. The Nigerian government can only blackmail and threaten you like they do to us. Right? At the end of the day, 90% of the Nigerian government's power is their ability to convince you that they can do things that they actually don't have the capacity to do. So it's actually all in your head. If you actually confront them frontally, one-on-one, actually, what you find out about every bully is that at heart, a bully is a coward. The Nigerian government is a coward. Or at least this Nigerian government is a coward, right? It's a bully that tries to go around stomping its feet at everyone, and that scares you, but it's a coward. So engage with it, and as maybe I should end this by quoting a Bible portion, if that's appropriate. I think because I was actually raised as a Christian, and there's a portion of the Bible that says, "Oppose the devil, and he will flee from you." And I think that's a very useful way of looking at the world. Don't be afraid to face injustice.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to end this. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to all our audience for enduring with us in spite of all the technical difficulties. Thank you, David. Just to remind our viewers that this book is available to download. You go to iconhelp.org/silent slaughter, and you can download this, get the information you need to continue in our fight against injustice in Nigeria. Let's not be afraid. Let's engage and let's raise our voices and speak up on behalf of Nigeria. David, I'm personally believing that this will not be the last conversation we will have, that we will bring you back. This will be the beginning of a great relationship between our podcast and your work. We're grateful to you for being here. We know that there's so many things that you could be doing with your time. And so thank you for being here. We appreciate you, and we hope to have you on again.
Thank you very much for having me, Priscilla.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm very blessed to be part of what's happening in Nigeria and the voices that are being raised. You know, y'all, this was longer than we expected, but we made it through. If you haven't done it yet, AJ was showing you that video. Go download the book. It doesn't cost you anything. Share it with somebody. Share this. You can tell them to start later. Share this with share this podcast. I always say, what are you going to do today? What are you going to do today to join ICON in our fight to promote human dignity, the right to live, and religious freedom in Nigeria, the protection of the vulnerable against persecution and against injustice? What are you going to do today? Not tomorrow. What are you going to do today? Did you learn something new from David today? Did you learn something new? Whom are you going to share it with? Because information shared is more likely to stick than information not shared. Have you written, for those of you here in the US, have you written to your representatives to say, I'm concerned about what's going on in Nigeria? I don't know how to write to my representative. Thank you. I'll tell you. Go to icanhelp.org/engage and we will give you all the information you need. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for enduring. That's the page there. icanhelp.org. You go /engage. It says be an advocate, and you can click there. We'll give you the information on who your representative is and what message to send to them. We got the work done for you, okay? So thank you all for joining us in this season of Hear Their Voices. This is the Icon Podcast. And again, my name is Priscilla Ozodo Acevedo. It's been a joy being your host. Thank you for joining us for this season finale. We'll be back with a new season of Hear Their Voices, the Icon Podcast. Have a blessed rest of your week. God bless you.